After more than 6 hours of testimony, Stormy Daniels now done, leaving the stand just moments ago. We are now on to another witness. But let's talk a little bit more about what we heard from Stormy Daniels today. Hours of cross-examination. Joining me now, former federal prosecutor Joseph Moreno. Good to have you with us this hour. So what we saw was pretty intense this morning, of course, for this second day of cross-examination from the defense, then some redirect, then back. What do you make overall of how this turned out? 6 hours and 2 minutes by our count in terms of over the course of 2 days for Stormy Daniels on the stand.
That's right, Erica. Well, from all accounts, I mean, the cross-examination sounded like it was more effective on Tuesday. It sounded like today they kind of got into these back and forth about the tawdry details, which makes it almost seem like the defense is taking it seriously. Because I think if they were trying to put on a brave face, they would have kind of ignored it and just sort of kind of gotten this done. So they may have dragged it out a little much today, a little surprising that they did that. But at the end of the day, you know, we don't get to see what the jury sees. And it's that body language, it's that eye contact they make with the lawyers on both sides that really kind of speaks a lot. So not knowing that, we don't really know how the jury ultimately took all of this testimony. But, you know, I guess we'll find out in a few weeks when this case wraps up.
In terms of how they may have taken the testimony, too, at the end of cross-examination, the defense attorney saying, what essentially, and I'm paraphrasing here, asking Stormy Daniels what she knows about the business records, about Donald Trump's business records. And she says, well, I don't know anything about it. Why would I? That was the thought that they left with at the end of cross, right, before redirect began. Bringing it back to that point, the defense clearly trying to show, look, you're not the person who can show this paper trail here. Did that help or hurt them, though, the way that question was thrown out?
It probably helped them, but I would have done it probably 3 hours earlier. I would have done it on Tuesday afternoon to wrap up then. Because, I mean, look, they want to say this is an unnecessary witness. They want to basically appeal to the jury to say the prosecution is banging up our client for no reason, and she has nothing to do with the guts of the case, which is fraudulent business records. So I think it helped ultimately, but it probably was a little too late because they made the jury sit through, again, hours more of cross-examination, and it almost kind of validated the reason she was there. Again, easy for me to say, but I got to think I would have just kept it minimal and kind of say, let's say, move on to the next witness.
To your point of trying to keep it minimal, we were told that the defense had decided they were going to go a little longer because they felt that some damage had been done to Donald Trump's character on that first day that Stormy Daniels was on the stand. And so they needed to sort of rehabilitate him. Did you see any of that happening based on what we know about the questioning and the answers? I mean, back and forth, fairly combative with Stormy Daniels, but they were going over and over again some of these points that involved Donald Trump. Did that in any way rehabilitate his character, if in fact it had been dinged at all?
Probably not. I mean, I think it seemed like they were kind of digging the hole deeper and deeper. And there's kind of two scenarios as to why they did this extended cross-examination today. One is it could be to your point, that real damage was done and the defense perceived they had to help undo it. Whether they were successful or not, that's a different story. The second possibility is that Donald Trump insisted on it, that he personally wanted to see one of the number two witness against him, most likely, kind of take a couple of shots. So again, whether or not it was a good idea, whether or not it was productive in the eyes of the jury, hard to say, but kind of sitting on the outside, seemed like it was not a great idea.
Yeah. As we're looking at this now, so Stormy Daniels has done. She has left. She thanked the judge as she left the stand. And so we are now turning back to sort of a document as opposed to a dramatic witness, if you will. So on the stand now is someone who worked for the Trump Organization for 11 years, worked as an assistant to Alan Weisselberg. This is where we are now going to see, as this is brick by brick for the prosecution trying to build their case, this is somebody who worked and saw the finances. How important is it to bring things back to that part of the case for the prosecution, especially on the heels of 2 days of testimony from Stormy Daniels?
Well, I mean, it's critical. And I understand the sort of vacillating between a more exciting witness and basically a more boring one. But they have to get back here. I mean, this is the crux of the case. And they don't want to basically support the defense's argument that the government's all over the place. I mean, this is the fraudulent books and records core of the case. It's the heart of it. So it's absolutely essential. And look, many people have been critical of the case as a whole, But the facts are not great for the defense, right? I mean, the fact is that these payments were made. They were made in the weeks leading up to the 2016 election, and they were made in the books and records in a completely dishonest way that mischaracterized them. So at the end of the day, the government has to keep coming back to this and reminding the jury that, you may have gotten a kick out of what you heard the last couple of days from Stormy Daniels, but there is a serious side to this case, and that's what you're about to hear this afternoon.
So what is that balance, right? As a former federal prosecutor, as you're laying out your case there, if you are trying to balance the dramatic with the perhaps a little more boring aspects of your case, how deep do they need to go on this for the next several witnesses to get back to that point of, hey, just a reminder, these are the facts as we see them in this case. Here's why we allege there was a crime.
I mean, it's a judgment call, right? I mean, you certainly could imagine jurors kind of falling asleep if you spend hours and hours talking about accounting records. I mean, nobody's into that. So they really have to, again, get a sense of the jury. How are they responding? Are they understanding? Do you have to go into more detail to make sure it kind of gets through? Or are you overdoing it, where the jurors are effectively saying, hey, we got it? And so, again, the case is complicated in some ways, and in some ways it's not. The facts are not that complicated. And I think the prosecution has to keep hammering that again and again, that these payments, regardless of whether you think the affair that may or may not have happened was either appropriate or not appropriate, the fact is the accounting records were done in a way meant to conceal the nature of these payments. That's what they have to keep coming back to, and that's not a difficult thing to explain to a jury.
Former federal prosecutor Judge Moreno, great to have you this afternoon, I should say. Time has passed. Thank you.
Thanks, Erica.